Good morning, everybody. It's about 10:05, so I think that allowed enough time for everybody to get settled. So we're going to get started. Just as a reminder, this is broadcasted on YouTube Live as well. We are recording this session today to push it out to our community at the conclusion for any of our families that were unable to attend today. So just wanted to let people know that we are recording today to be able to push this webinar out to our families after this. So wanted to let everybody know that. Before we get started, we want to give some introductions. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Bull with Foothill and to introduce himself and his team.
Thanks, Mr. Butterfield. Yes, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Sebastian Bull, the principal at Foothill High School. If you don't know me, I'll let my team that's here introduce themselves. They'll unmute and turn on their cameras for a second. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Malcolm. Oh, sorry, Jen. Go ahead, Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Friesen, Vice Principal at Foothill, and I support the Counseling, Special Ed, and Social Studies departments and the alphabet H through O.
Sure. Hi, I'm Malcolm Norrington, Vice Principal. I support whose last names end in P through Z.
Hi, Amber Carrion. I support students with last names A through G.
Hello, and then Joseph Viviani, Site Coordinator.
Thank you very much, and give it back to you, Mr. Butterfield, for Amador staff.
Thank you. Welcome, families. My name's Josh Butterfield. I'm the principal over at Amador Valley High School, and I'll hand it off to Miss Condi to introduce herself.
Hi, Terry Condi, Vice Principal at Amador. I support the Special Education Department, Counseling Department, senior class activities and programs and testing for AP and SAT and PSAT, and I support alphabet S, F through Z. Nice to see everybody.
And hi, I'm Jamie Mather. I'm another vice principal at Amador. I support students with last names LJ through SE. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much. So our goal for today, as you saw from our email, we extended the final confirmation deadline to select hybrid versus remote instruction for the remainder of the 2021 school year. And part of that extension is we wanted to get some more information out to our families. So to make sure our families were able to make the most informed decision. We realize that this is a heavy decision to make, and we have a pretty quick turnaround time on it. So we shared a lot of information in an email. Foothill families and Amador families received the same content yesterday from both me and Mr. Bull. And the goal for today is to put a little voice to some of the information that was in the content of that email and hopefully provide information so our families can make the most informed decision possible as they determine whether their students will return to in-person instruction or remain remote for the remainder of this school year. I do want to emphasize, because a question's been raised a couple times, that this decision is only for this school year. So your selection of remote or hybrid does not impact any decisions for the coming school year. So we just want to emphasize that the focus of today is for the spring semester here, and that the decisions that you make don't carry into next school year. So with that, if we don't mind jumping to the next slide. Mr. Bull, do you have anything to add there?
I was going to just mention, because it did come up in the Q&A about planning for next year, which we'll get to that. We're looking at those. It all depends on the health guidance and so on. So we will revisit that. But as Mr. Butterfield said, this today is focusing on where we are now for the remainder of the spring semester. So but he already mentioned that, just to clarify. Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Butterfield.
Yeah, so I want to let everybody know that we've been working incredibly hard. We're excited to welcome our students back onto campus, and we are excited to continue to support our remote learners. So we want to assure that our families that regardless of whichever method or learning option that you choose, that our staffs are here to support all of our students, and we're dedicated to that no matter what. So our guiding document through the last fall and winter so far has been this Alameda County Health Department guiding document. We are in version 27 of this document since August. So we read every version that comes out. We look at the health guidance, and as we prepare to welcome our students back to in-person learning, this is our document that helps guide our practice in terms of mitigating risk and creating a healthy school campus as our students begin to return. This is available on the Alameda County website. You can just Google Alameda County School Opening Guidance, and you'll be able to find that document as well if you have additional questions about further details of the discussion today.
And just to let you know, you may have seen this from communications that have been pushed out from either the school sites or from the district office. This is what the board approved last week on Thursday, if I get the day correct. This is the return to campus plan. So obviously this includes our elementary students, middle school, and then for us the high school. Currently, we're still in the purple tier. The guidance or the criteria gets updated every week. It's usually on a Tuesday, so we're looking, but we're still in the purple tier. There's no change to that. According to the state guidelines, secondary schools, so middle school and high school, so for high school, it cannot open until you're in the red tier for at least 5 days. So our tentative plan, which is approved by the board, is that for us at Foothill and Amador Valley High School, we would have our 9th through 12th grade students begin returning on March 11th. And again, this is all tied to the fact that if we've been in the red tier for 5 days. So we will have to keep an eye on that and see if we're in the red tier at least 5 days prior, that date will hold, but it could possibly change if the red tier is not reached before 5 days before that. So we will update families if we get that point. March 11th, that day, which is a Thursday, we would have the students that are in our group B, which is letters M through Z, would be coming to campus. And then on Tuesday, March 16th, we'd have our group A students, which is letters A through L for the most part. There may be a few adjustments as we go through. This is done because, and we'll talk about this as we get through the safety procedures or safety guidelines, we can't have all the students on campus at the same time. Our classes have to be limited in size based on the requirements from Alameda County Health Department for that. So just so you know, this is kind of our tentative start date of March 11th and March 16th for the different groups. And we'll talk more about the details of what that looks like as we go through. So next slide, please.
I'm going to talk very briefly through this slide, and then the next slide after this provides a little greater clarity and detail. So part of right now our memorandum of understanding, or MOU, with our labor organizations is to facilitate time to allow our staff and students to prepare for the transition back to in-person learning. So for the high schools, those dates for our staff orientation, where we're going to help walk our staff through the safety protocols and facilities and operations protocols, will be March 5th. And then they will have time to prepare their classrooms and get ready to welcome our students back. So on the 8th through the 10th, March 8th through the 10th, will be time for our teachers to focus on preparing their classrooms. Mr. Bull is going to go over what that looks like for students on March 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th in just a second. And like Mr. Bull mentioned, March 11th will be the first day that we welcome students back onto campus. And again, that assumes that we've been in the red tier for 5 days. Right now, the metrics are looking positive. So we are preparing for that date. If for some reason our county metrics look different, or if it looks like we're not nearing that target date, then we will be communicating with our families if for some reason there's any changes. But right now, that's our target date that we're aiming for to prepare for that, and assuming that we're in the red tier for 5 days. Next slide, please.
So as Mr. Butterfield mentioned, there's some more detailed information about this transition period. So we want to let you know, and we'll push this out, of course, this recording, since we're recording this, we'll push it out to everybody, but also we'll put this out in writing so everybody knows kind of the plans as we are transitioning back to our students back to campus. So a few key schedule adjustments that will be important for you as parents, guardians, and for students to know is March 4th, which is the day before our orientation day, as Mr. Butterfield referenced in the previous slide. We're going to have to change our schedule. And I know it's short notice, but if you remember other days during the school year when we've been in remote, we've had to use this modified day schedule where every class meets for 30 minutes because we can't have the 2 days back to back for running our block classes. The advantage of this is, well, one, we have to because the classes can't meet otherwise. You want to have them all meet. And also it allows the teachers a chance to, push out information about what the transition days will look like for their classes and work the students may have. So we will push this out again to let everybody know, but March 4th, the Thursday, will be a modified day schedule. You just expect probably auto dialers from us to remind you again, but that's an important piece of the transition as we go through. As Mr. Butterfield mentioned, the transition in staff orientation days, March 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. So Friday, March 5th, and then the following week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are days that are set aside for staff transition to get the classrooms and campus ready and all their planning as we transition to a new mode of teaching for a lot of our staff. So what that means is going to be asynchronous days for students. It's going to be like a Wednesday, which this is part of our requirement to transition back. So what will happen for our students' expectation is they will attend their Access or Flex class, Access at Amador, Flex at Foothill, same time that's normally on a Wednesday, and they would log in with their Flex or Access teacher at 9:45. The teacher would take attendance, give them a few updates, and then the students would then go off and work on their asynchronous work or independent learning activities that have been provided by the teachers for the various classes. This is done because then the staff has the time to transition, prepare, plan, organize the rooms, get everything ready for all the safety procedures, which we'll touch upon briefly. The next dates, which we already referenced before, is March 11th, the Thursday. Our cohort B or group B will come to campus in the morning, and we'll get the schedule next. But periods 1, 3, and 5 in person, those are our hybrid students that would be coming in person. The students that are remote, they're remaining remote, they would follow the normal schedule. They would log into their classes first, third, and fifth period on that day, March 11th. For March 16th, the cohort A or group A students, the hybrid in-person students would arrive to come to campus, and they would attend periods 2, 4, and 6 in person. The remote students that are staying remote, they would log in just like they normally do for periods 2, 4, and 6, following their normal processes. An important piece to point out, just so you know, Friday, March 12th, which has been scheduled since last year, was designated a staff development day. So it's a non-student attendance day. So there's no school on Friday, March 12th. So there's no requirements to log into classes and so on Friday, March 12th. It's a staff development day across the district. And then Monday, March 15th is a holiday. It's a day off from school. So that's a non-school day as well. So this timing is a little odd because of the way it's falling. So that's why it's staggered like this on a Thursday and a Tuesday. I know it causes some confusion, but this is, we're following the board direction in terms of our first day back. And this is why there's this kind of gap in between of starting our days. Once we get past the March 16th, then we would follow a normal schedule, which Mr. Butterfield can kind of reference a little bit more in the next slide. So next slide, please.
So one of our goals in creating our hybrid and remote schedule, and this goes all the way back to July, was to create a model that would remain consistent regardless of remote or in-person instruction. And so that was one of the goals in creating the schedule. So I'll walk you through what it looks like for an individual student. But one of the things I want to emphasize, whether you're in Group A hybrid, Group B hybrid, or remote learning, your weekly schedule will have the same cadence to it that the students have been used to. So those consistent routines are very important for the students, and so we're really working to make sure that everybody understands that we're maintaining those routines. So the block schedule that you see on your screen is the schedule that students have been accessing in their classes remotely right now, and that schedule is going to remain the same whether you're in Group A, Group B, or remote. So I'm going to use Mr. Bull for an example today. So Mr. Bull, because his last name begins with B, if he selected hybrid, he would be a part of our Group A cohort. So in this model, if Mr. Bull selected hybrid, he would be coming to campus on Monday and Tuesday, arriving in time for his first period class at 8:30, and he would be moving through periods 1, 3, and 5 on Monday. And then he would be leaving campus, exiting campus after period 5, 12:20. And then on Tuesday, he would be coming in person for periods 2, 4, 6. On Wednesday, he would be logging into Access just like he has been all school year. And then Thursday and Friday, Mr. Bull, because he's part of Group A, will be accessing his classes remotely on Thursday and Friday. So Monday and Tuesday for Group A would be the in-person learning days, and then remote the rest of the week. If you're a Group B hybrid learner, end of the alphabet, M through Z, you would be in person on Thursday, Friday, and accessing our programming remotely on the other days. So students will not be staying on campus after lunch. We will have grab and go lunches available at all of our campuses, as well as all the drive-through locations that have been open for our students throughout this time. The one exception is if students are assigned an A or B period, we'll have designated lunch areas for that small group of students to make sure that they're able to have lunch before they attend those A or B period classes. So that is the learning schedule for everybody. So remote learners will do exactly what they've been doing, logging into each of their classes every day. A question gets posed a lot is there going to be different expectations or different learning experiences for in-person versus remote? There might be some classroom activities that vary, just that lend themselves better in person versus remote, and that, you know, remote students might have to do a breakout room while in-person students join a breakout room while they're in class, or they have a class discussion on something. However, the students are going to be engaged in the same learning opportunities throughout. And I want to remind everybody that even though we have hybrid learners coming to campus, all of our students, 100% of them, are still going to be engaged in remote activities to some degree throughout the week, because students are only on campus 2 days a week, depending on which cohort they are. So I want to emphasize that if you've selected remote, no, we're not going to shortchange those students to having less activities, and same thing with our hybrid learners. So just something to be aware that we are prepared, and we're working to provide further professional development to support all of our students, both hybrid and remote through this.
Mr. Butterfield, can I add on one more thing that came up in the Q&A? Is the question came up about the A period and B period after lunch. So obviously both high schools have similar schedules. We're following the same schedule, but Foothill and Amador may have different numbers of A or B period classes. So that we'll push this out more specifically to those students in A and B period classes. But the lunchtime on campus, the 12:30 to 1, is, as we've followed all year, as Mr. Butterfield mentioned, the same sort of schedule. After, let's say, on Group A, 5th period, the students, there'd be a grab and go, a lunch possibility. They'd grab their lunch and then they would, take off and head back home and prepare for the afternoon remote activities and working on things. If a student is in an A or B period class, they obviously have class in person if they're a hybrid student at 1 to 2:10 on those given days. So they would be the students who would be allowed to stay on campus because they have class at 1 o'clock. We would have to set up a designated area where they can, have their lunch and so on, and then they would go to class in person again if they're the in-person hybrid learners from 1 to 2:10. That's going to cause some confusion and take some adjustment as we get used to it. But the students that are here for 1 through 5, they would be leaving at lunchtime to head home, to transition home. Then we start the cleaning process of campus, except for obviously the classrooms being used for A and B periods. And then those students in A and B period would, have their lunch and hang out, and then wait until the class starts at 1 o'clock. So it's a little different mode. So we have to kind of work through the logistics of that. Another piece that came up, Mr. Butterfield, is which was from the previous slide, is about the transition days and a lot of asynchronous work for students, which we understand that that's a concern. It's a concern for everybody, because there's a lot of coursework to cover and so on, but it's part of the needed transition to make sure we have everything in place for the health and safety procedures, and for the teachers planning to get ready and the staff planning to get ready for the campus to welcome the students back who are coming as hybrid learners on person. So we understand it's a difficulty. It's not going to be a week off. It's going to be a lot of asynchronous work, some independent work, maybe students catching up on things that they're behind on, at that time as they, get ready for the transition back to campus if they are returning to campus. So sorry to cut you off, Mr. Butterfield.
No, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And there were a couple questions. So hopefully our explanation of the schedule cleared it up. Students will attend if you're in Group A and hybrid, every Monday, Tuesday, and Group B hybrid every Thursday, Friday. So it's not alternating weeks. Those are the set days that students will be attending in person there. So I know there's some other questions about classroom setup and things like that. Just so you know, there's not maximum capacity in the classrooms in terms of max number of students. Our capacity in our classrooms based on our ability to distance desks within a classroom. So the reason we've divided up into Group A and B is because the health guidance requires us to reduce the density and maintain distancing between our desk setup. And so we've gone through our campus, and I know Mr. Bull's done the same. We've set up a number of sample classrooms with different configurations to kind of figure out how many desks would fit with the required distancing between them. And right now, things are looking great with the number of people who've selected hybrid for us to meet those guidelines and maintain the distancing within each of the classrooms. So in general, that's about 15 students or 15 desks per classroom, give or take, depending on the classroom configuration about what the capacity of each class will look like. Obviously, there's some other classes like PE that might be outdoors that will have a little bit bigger capacity because they're outdoors, they have more space. So we feel good about where we are right now with our family selections of hybrid versus remote and our ability to meet the needs of the families that have selected hybrid and maintain distanced classrooms and reduce density across campus. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So I know there's a lot of questions that came up in the Q&A that dealt with campus preparations and some of the safety and health procedures, which I'll cover in the next couple slides. And there were some questions that came up that refer to what will the teaching look like. So Mr. Butterfield will address those when we get to that slide in a few slides from now. So just so you know, we saw your questions coming in there. So let me share with you briefly what we've done in terms of our campus preparations at both high schools. Mr. Butterfield referenced the classroom capacity piece. We are required by Alameda County guidelines to maintain 6-foot physical distancing between students and staff. So as we prepare the campus for the return of students for the hybrid learners, we have to set up those classrooms in that mode. So as Mr. Butterfield referenced, every classroom is a little different. So some classrooms, like at Foothill, for example, when we've measured out the spaces, we can fit maybe 10 to 12 student desks in there in that classroom. That's about it, maintaining the 6-foot distance, front to back, side to side, in terms of maintaining that safe distance. So that's part of the preparation that we're going through now. We have to determine the capacity issues in each class, and then do we need to look at alternative setups or locations for some of those arrangements there. I think the systems have been finished now, but every HVAC system on campus, and if you've been to the board meetings, they've referenced this every time, but every HVAC system at the high schools has been adjusted for the airflow. So it's bringing in more outside air than it used to as part of the ventilation process. And they're all set to turn on or keep going more times in the day. So one piece of advice is you may have some more air blowing and maybe a little bit cooler in classrooms. So just as a advice for students, it may not be maybe a warmer day outside. It might be cooler in the classrooms as the air is flowing to try and keep the air moving in the classrooms. I believe they finished this week installing all the MERV 13 filters and all the HVAC systems, which those are the filters that are supposed to filter out the various viruses and things. So those are in, that'll help filter the air. In addition, we put in it's a small unit that goes in every classroom. It's a HEPA filter. That's another filter on the ground level that is filtering the air in the classrooms. Also blows air around and filters it. It has filters and lights inside the system that clean the air as well. There'll be a requirement for, every classroom is a little different, but using hand sanitizer as students enter the classroom. It says hand sanitizer, hand washing. There's not many classrooms that have sinks. And then if you had sinks, you're dealing with students lining up at a sink. That's not easy. So it would be hand sanitizing. So we have so those supplies going out to every classroom so that they would be available for students and staff to use when they're coming and going from classrooms. Because as has been shared throughout this whole past year with the COVID, you get things on your hand, you're touching your face, that could cause some exposure or some spread there. We're also been working through the process of putting a lot of campus signage, including directional arrows. Those have been going down on campuses. Some other signs will go up in the next couple of weeks as we get closer. which will help direct people which way to go, and reminders about 6-foot spacing and so on. And also some of those signature or those dots that are on the ground to space people out, like if they're coming to the office or bathrooms, just so they can keep that 6-foot distancing. We also, as a admin team, some of us go through some what's called a COVID liaison training. So we learn all about the symptom, tracking symptoms and exposure, and then what we do in that case if there's any exposure or symptoms of COVID-19 and what our response is for that. So we'll put this all in writing into what that looks like as we push this out, so you're all aware. But this is all part of our training process we've gone through. And the last thing, which this came up in the Q&A, was a question about this, is the campus cleaning and disinfecting. So this is part of our preparation. It's been done beforehand, and then, excuse me, in between each of the groups that are coming on campus, the custodial staff will be doing their disinfection, but they'll be cleaning in between groups in the classrooms. So there was a question about, well, 10 minutes, how does that work? So the cleaning part is just using a soap and water mixture. So it's not a harsh chemical, but soap and water does enough to help with the cleaning, and is required as part of the procedures between groups in a classroom. So those would be happening between the classes as students are transitioning. But if you have a class of, like we referenced before, 10, 12, 14, 15 students, that's 14, 10 to 14 desks you're cleaning, not 36 desks you're cleaning. So that helps a little bit. You have to clean all the high touch points, door handles, and all those things, which it'll be try our best to be all hands on deck to do this. So that's kind of the preparations we're going through to get ready for the students to return. But these are all referenced in, as Mr. Butterfield said in the first slide, the Alameda County guidelines for reopening. So it references all the requirements that are in there. So, next slide, please. So the one thing that's important that people understand this, so this is a lot of questions come from this. What will it look like when the students actually return? I mean, Mr. Butterfield did a great job of describing the schedule of our group A or group B students that are hybrid coming to campus, and then our students are remote learners. But the students that are coming to campus for the hybrid portion, it's important to know what that would look like. And I'll be honest, this is new for us as well. So we have been racking our brains and talking through all these things, and we have to make final adjustments up until the day when students return for this. But here's some general procedures that will be followed, just so you understand kind of what this will look like. And this again goes back to the requirements that are put out by the county that we are required to do to be able to return students to campus. So this is not just our arbitrary rules we've made up. These are things we have to follow the Alameda County guidelines. So one of the things is there will be a student screener, which will be completed daily. We'll provide more information about this when we get closer. Our school district is looking at a digital tool that will be pushed out to families to do every day, which we'll provide those details later on, and we'll make it much easier. It would be an at-home screener that would be done, and staff do the same thing. We screen every single day. So that'll be completed daily. So before students leave home, they would have to do this screener, and it asks the pretty standard questions. So if you've been part of our athletic camps or those things before, ask questions if you've had any symptoms in the last 24 hours or symptoms over a period of time, been exposed to somebody with COVID or symptoms, so on and so forth, because we can't have anybody come to campus who does not meet the criteria on that screener, because then there's a possibility of having COVID and then spreading it to other people on campus, students and staff. So that's the reason for the screener. So it's required to do that every single day, and we implore you to do that and take it seriously, because we need to minimize the exposure and get ahead of this whole COVID-19 spread. We will be providing instructions specifically. It'll be different for each campus, obviously, because obviously Foothill and Amador are very different campuses. But we'll provide instructions as we get closer for whether a student is driving themselves, or if a student is being dropped off by a family member, or if they're riding their bikes, or what that looks like. So we'll provide specific instructions, but there'll be designated areas we would want people to be dropped off, and then it'll help manage the flow in terms of the numbers of people. And this is done to maximize the distancing, right? So the space between students as they're walking on campus, we can't have them all congregate together in one area as they're all pouring out of their cars. And so we have to make sure we can ensure spreading that out. One piece that we'll get some updates on hopefully soon is, possible use of the wheels bus system for those students that need it. We don't know yet if that'll be able to be running, but the school district is working with the wheels bus service to make it happen. So we'll be following up shortly with that information once we get that. Students will be required to wear a mask while on campus the entire time. So that is a mandate. Staff, we have to wear masks. I'm not wearing one right now because I'm in my office by myself, but Students will be required to wear masks all day on campus while they're here, in the classrooms, while they're walking around on campus. It is a requirement by the Alameda County Health Department. Students will be following directional arrows, signage. We've set it up to try and minimize, clustering of people together. It try and maintains the physical distancing between students as they are walking around. So some of the biggest spots are like stairwells, like you can't have people congregating on stairwells, directional arrows to tell people which way to walk so that people can keep moving and not kind of stick by each other. While they're transitioning to and from class periods, obviously they'd have their masks on, they're physically distanced. They might be talking to each other as they're walking to and from class, which that's fine, but they have to try and maintain the 6 foot distance as much as possible. So those are things that we have to be out there constantly enforcing and reminding, and because our goal is safety for all of our students and staff, so we can maintain our open status and have our students back on campus. Mr. Butterfield referenced the lunch piece before, the grab and go aspect. And sorry, Mr. Butterfield, you're going to say something there. So,
no, go ahead and continue with that.
Okay.
I'm going to address a couple questions.
Okay, I'm just rambling on here. So the lunch grab and go, and we'll push out more information as we get closer to what that looks like. But there will be an area, designated area, where students would grab or pick up their lunch, and then those students are leaving. Obviously, for first through fifth or second through sixth period students, they would take it home with them and eat it at home. The one thing we mentioned before, the exception is those students are in A and B period, and we'll share information for those specific students. They'll be allowed to, either bring a lunch or grab and go lunch. We have to have a designated area where they can eat lunch on campus. But that means people can't hang out and visit that are in earlier morning classes. They have to leave campus because, like I said, we have to maintain physical distancing. We have to prepare the campus and get it cleaned before the next day when the students come back. So that takes a long time to do all those things. And the last thing is the bathrooms. Obviously, that's a pretty small spaces, so we have to figure out ways to limit the capacity and maintain the physical distancing. So it may be different in each school because we have different locations of bathroom or their bathroom sizes, but we may say there's only 1 or 2 students in the bathroom at a time, limit when they are open and available in terms of the capacity wise. So just so everybody's aware that they're not going to be a standard, a bathroom where people can pile into. It'll be a smaller capacity because we have to maintain that physical distancing. So I'll stop there, Mr. Butterfield. Questions that came up yet?
Yeah, so just staying on the slide in terms of navigating hybrid school on campus. So there's a number of questions about parking. So we will have parking permits available at both high schools for students that are driving themselves. The biggest thing is that this is kind of a big overview that we're doing today, but as we near our in-person learning start date, you're going to be getting videos and information from the school. So please keep an eye on that. And one of the big things about it is, I'll just use kind of Amador, for example. If your first period class is in a certain set of buildings, you're going to be asked to enter through a certain set of gates that are closest to that to minimize kind of, to make sure that we're able to help our students distance. So the drop off or whether students are driving themselves will be outlined with more detail as we get a little bit closer to the start date on those items. So don't worry, students will be able to get parking permits and drive themselves or be dropped off either way on that regard. There's a couple questions about can students just come for a science lab or can students just come for certain classes? The answer is no, we're asking students to select either hybrid or remote. And the reason being is that we have to prepare our classrooms. We need to be able to anticipate who's coming every day. We need to be able to create a consistency because that's good for kids. That consistent routine is good for kids, and it allows us as staff members to plan and prepare to make sure that we have a safe environment. So we ask our families to make this commitment, and I know it's a heavy commitment to make, but in order for us to prepare our campus, anticipate the needs of the students, anticipate who's going to be on campus every day, you need to either select hybrid or remote in this case. And obviously there's a long-term independent study that's a little bit separate, but those are the options right now. And then you would be assigned to that cohort. So if you're in cohort A, you cannot choose to come on cohort B days because it might work out better for you on the, no, we need students to be assigned to those cohorts. So one of the things is that we're going to be going through rosters to make sure that all the students assigned to cohort A are able to fit in the classrooms. And if we have to make some moves to maintain the social distancing and reassign somebody from A to B, we will do that. But right now things are looking pretty positive in our ability to manage just as it is with a pretty solid division. There's also a couple questions about percentages of hybrid versus remote. I would say in general, we're about 50-50. I think maybe 55% hybrid versus 45% remote right now. But we're monitoring change forms right now. So that's fluctuating gently on both sides of that. So we're monitoring that. So if your students are telling you, no, all my friends are remote, or no, all my friends are hybrid, or nobody's going to school, that's not the case. We are split pretty evenly between hybrid and remote. So that's the truth of it. If you're having conversations at home, just want to make sure that you had information about that.
And one thing I will say, Mr. Butterfield, to that, it may differ by class period. So one class period may have 8 hybrid in-person learners, and then the next period your student may go to may have 12, and the next period may have 4. So it all depends on the breakdown between those things, but the big B group might be a little bit bigger on those other days. So we don't, it's not an equal split 50-50 in terms of each period. It's all based on alphabet breakdown and the groups that people are put into. One of the things just to mention, Mr. Butterfield, that came up in the chat as well, is, which will share this information like we said, more specifically, but yeah, students can ride their bikes to school, we have their bike racks, all those things. That's a great way to get some exercise and fresh air in the morning and encourage that. And then there was a question which ties back to the previous slide, was about the protocols if there is an exposure on campus in the classroom. So let me just touch upon that briefly, just so you know, but that's part of our COVID liaison or COVID training we have to go through. So we have protocols that we have to follow if there is symptoms in a classroom. If a student or staff member exhibits symptoms, then we would have to isolate that person. We have a separate sort of waiting area until a family can come and pick up the student or staff member who would depart from campus. And if there is an exposure, depending on the time frame, and if it's, let's say, in first period class, a student or a staff member had symptoms and then ended up testing positive, we would have to, following the Alameda County requirements or guidelines, we would have to do a quarantine for those students that were exposed to the person who had positive. So we'll outline this. There's a lot of details to this, but we'll push this out so you can look at our requirements so you understand what it looks like. But yes, there would be a requirement that it could be a quarantine for a group of students and a staff member if there was exposure on campus to a positive case or some symptoms that have exhibited from that. So just so you're aware of that. So sorry, Mr. Butterfield, if you're going to add anything else.
No problem. There's a few questions about, our teachers are, yes, teachers are returning. And no, we are not, we don't have plans to reassign students or initiate schedule changes for students based on hybrid or remote choice. If there's any teachers reassignment through the process of remote or hybrid students, it'll be due to us having to respond to personnel issues, whether it's a leave request or something like that. So that happens throughout any school year where we have to deal with vacancies that arise through a school year. But we are not initiating student schedule changes based on whether you selected hybrid or remote. So that's not something that we're doing. Because of the kind of 50-50 hybrid versus remote split, all of our classes have both hybrid and remote learners in them. So every class on campus has a blend of learners. And so we're not initiating schedule changes to lump the remote learners together and hybrid learners together right now. We have at Amador, I'll say 530 different classes on campus, and that puzzle piece doesn't fit together to do schedule changes in addition to that. Like I've said it a couple times, our priority is to maintain the most consistent model for the students and create consistency in their learning experience. And we want to minimize disruptions to that. And so that's a priority for us. I know other surrounding school districts initiated a lot of teacher changes based on student selection. That's not what we will be doing. If there's any staffing or personnel changes, you might see a change there, but it's not dependent on whether you choose hybrid or remote. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. And we can jump to the next slide. So that's an example of what a picture really quick of what a 6-foot distancing might look like. That's an Amador Valley classroom that you see there that we set up. Like I said, we've been setting up a few different sample classes just to see how many desks we can fit in there. If you can jump to the next slide. So I'm sure everybody's heard this phrase concurrent instruction, but I just want to kind of provide some clarity, and then also just know that this is a new instructional model. So we can't address every specific question, but we want to give you a general overview of what this means. So SB 98, which is our state Senate bill, requires us to offer similar programming to our remote and in-person learners, regardless of the format. So know that we will support all students, whether they're remote or in person, through all of this. So where we find ourselves is that the law allows our families to make this choice, which we're providing for hybrid versus remote, and requires us to support all students in that model. So as students attend the block schedule and attend their 3 classes in the hybrid model, those who are not attending that day, who are hybrid or are remote learners, will be engaging in that discussion in that class remote. So you see a little graphic here. You see the teacher standing and delivering instruction to the in-person learners, while the at-home learners are accessing the same lesson at the same time remotely. We've completed a pretty significant technology purchase, and we use a catalog system. So all teachers had access to a catalog to select the technology that would help support this concurrent instruction model. So an example, some teachers decided that having a second device that might be used to project and display the screen while their current device could be used to monitor the remote learners. Other teachers might have used their points or the catalog offerings to order a standing kind of mobile workstation to where they could be a little bit more mobile in the classroom. Some teachers ordered webcams and peripherals to provide different access opportunities for their in-person and remote learners. So all those materials are arriving. A lot of it arrived this week, and a lot more is arriving next week, and we're working on distributing all that to our staff right now. So the technology supports are there. We're finding a couple other gaps in ordering some additional materials this week to try to make sure that that we're removing the obstacles and barriers to delivering the best instruction possible. So I think I think I'm okay speaking for Mr. Bull, but I know our priority is to get teachers what they need to do the best they can in this model. I also want to share that this is new. This is new for us in our educational model of delivering remote learning and in-person learning at the same time. As you remember, kind of in the initial shelter in place during last year's Q4 and at the start of this year, it takes some time to get our feet underneath us and to learn best practice and get our routines established for us and the students. So we ask for some grace and patience as we navigate this and support each other through this. Just know that anytime we initiate a pretty large scale change to our delivery program like that, that it just takes time for people to get comfortable and develop those routines, both staff and students. So be patient with us as we navigate this, and be aware that support and kindness is always welcome through this process. Next slide, please. So the good thing the good thing, and I don't want to oversimplify it because it is there's a lot of learning to happen among us as professionals and as students through this process, but we know how to deliver instruction in person. We've been doing that for decades, and I can tell you that we have every confidence in our staff to be able to deliver great in-person instruction. We have worked really hard to expand our toolbox for our remote learning activities. So, when I've talked to students, when I've observed classes, our routines are there with how we're delivering remote instruction. We're always reflecting, whether we're in person or remote, on how to improve our practice. That is a constant practice in education. We always want to reflect, look at how well students do, figure out how we can make it better. So we've been doing that throughout this year with our remote learning program. So the trick now is to figure out how to blend those two practices. We have the tools. We've completed a number of district purchases. We have Google Classroom, the Google Suite at our disposal. We have programs like Edpuzzle, Pear Deck, and we have a lot of digital curriculum that we've expanded through this year. So we're hoping that since we have the tools, we have practice with some of those digital tools, that as we move into the concurrent, we just have to figure out how to utilize those in an in-person and a hybrid method. Like I said, there's a learning curve here. This is new for us, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but we have professional development planned for our staff tomorrow, actually. We started diving into the conversation a couple different times through this semester in our professional development time. And then March 12th, we have a full day dedicated to professional development to really focus on helping refine and establish this practice. Mr. Bolt?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge a few questions that came up in the Q&A that are tied to what you're discussing here. So questions came up in reference to the hybrid students returning to classroom. Will they be required to bring Chromebooks, which we'll talk about that, and then will they be Zooming? So just wanted to point out that, well, in the beginning, yes, I mean, we're going to start very basic where, I mean, the model we've been delivering, whether it be Zoom or some staff have been using Google Meet, for example, they have been doing that where all the students are on one platform and they're having the class that way. So in the beginning, yes, students will be logging into Zoom in the classroom. And then as staff learn the new tools and the transitions, then yes, it may move away from that a little bit. But as Mr. Butterfield referenced, the state law requires that there is synchronous instruction, right? So daily as part of the SB 98, the Senate Bill 98. But you have to provide this instruction for students. So we have to balance the needs for our in-person hybrid learners and the students that are remote at the same time. So yes, there will be students on Zoom in the classroom while their students are at home. And there'll be some professional development, tomorrow and then in the coming weeks that'll help with what that may look like. But in the beginning, it may be like that. And then slowly as there's, comfort level grows and things transition, you may see a little bit different to that. But just to let you know, that's kind of the initial starting point for a lot of our staff, because as you know, we quickly transitioned to this last March, and then we learned a lot over the summer and have been refining these skills and been delivering this consistent approach. Last time, now we have to shift to a different mode. So we may start with that and transition as we go. So that may help address some of those questions there. So sorry, Mr. Butterfield, if you have something else to say.
No, I just want to emphasize that things might look different class to class as teachers learn to navigate this.
Very true. Yeah.
And I hope that we develop some mutual trust in knowing that regardless of where our starting place is on this, that we are going to work tirelessly to make the best learning experience for our students. So regardless of where each person as an individual teacher starts with their comfort level and their skill base in this, know that we are going to support and provide professional development and direction to make sure that this is a really solid and robust learning model for our students.
One thing I will say, Mr. Butterfield, is our staff has worked super hard this last year to figure out the remote learning, and They are amazing individuals and they work very hard. So there's going to be a transition, and you're right. It's going to be different in a Spanish classroom versus a PE classroom versus a science classroom. So you'll see different experiences, and some staff are learning as they go. So you'll see different implementation of these different things. And there was a question that came up that, yes, while they're Zooming in the classroom, if they're all on the Zoom together, for minimizing disruptive noise, they may be asked to put on headphones while they're there. That could be something the teacher may request or may need. It stops the distracting noise from the outside. So that's something that maybe in there, but it could be they're doing live direct instruction for the whole class for 15, 20 minutes on the Zoom, and then they may transition to independent activities where the at-home learners are working on something and the students in class are working on something, and then teachers may be able to walk around and help support and answer questions and so on. So those are the things that have to be kind of navigated and worked through. So just to highlight that piece as well.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
So this one is for me just to highlight. And one thing I will say, because there's a lot of really good questions, and I will say that, we referenced this before, this is going to be a messy transition. We'll do our best. We're working our hardest to get everything ready. But a lot of those questions you're putting there are really good. So what we've done is, obviously we're recording this presentation, we'll share it out with everybody, and then we'll try and capture those questions, and we'll put together a kind of a Q&A document that we can push out as well, because these are really good questions that you're asking, and I'm sure the other parents and guardians and students and staff that aren't able to see this, they'll have similar questions. So hopefully we can capture all this and push it out for you. And things we don't know yet, we are working to get answers for, so we will work on that. But one thing that we wanted to review is how can your family prepare for this transition back to the hybrid in-person learners, and also the remote learners. It's pretty consistent to what they've been experiencing throughout the school year. But for those that are coming to campus, one of the most important things we can't stress this enough is we know there's information overload. Like I get it as a staff member, but also as a parent, I get tons of emails and I get lost in it. But we will try our best to push out things in different means. But please, if you can, monitor informational emails, because we're going to try and push out as much information as possible in the coming weeks about things that we're referencing in terms of the arrival and departure from campus, the parking needs, the safety procedures, all this stuff that's really important for our families to know, so that they are informed when they're coming to campus and everybody can stay safe. Because our biggest thing, Mr. Butterfield said this in the beginning, that we can't wait to welcome our students back to campus, and we are excited to support our remote learners. But there's a lot of things we have to make sure we can do to keep everybody safe, so that we don't revert back to where we are, where we're fully remote, because we want to have people on campus. I miss seeing the smiling faces and the energy on campus. So this is really important to monitor. All this information will push out to you. Students will be expected to arrive daily with a fully charged device. So we've had district issued Chromebooks that have been pushed out before, or some students had opted out and are using their own device. But because of this mixture of students with the hybrid in-person and the remote at home, there's going to be a need for fully charged device, because during the school day, there may not be as much availability of charging a device while you're still sitting at a desk maintaining six foot distancing. So this will just help avoid that as a barrier to the learning opportunities. So we'll have some backup chargers and things here and there, but it just helps, one less thing to worry about. So as your student goes to sleep at night, just plug it in and charge it, and then be bringing it to campus the next day with them. As we referenced before, students and staff will be required to complete a daily health screener. So we will push out more information about what this looks like once our district has this all set up. It's a tech tool, which actually should make it much easier. So the key thing is, if you have a student that is symptomatic, so we will push this out in our information, but symptoms like difficulty breathing or sore throat, some of the COVID symptoms, you need to keep them home, because they're not going to pass the screener, and then there's a chance of them exposing other students if they do have COVID. So we referenced this a little bit before. We are not doing testing of students in terms of COVID testing on campus. We're not doing as a student walks on the campus, we're not going to do a temperature scan as they walk on a campus. Those are things that we have to keep the visual signs for, and if there's something we're seeing in terms of symptoms, we'll have to isolate, as you mentioned. But please, if there's any symptoms, you need to keep your students home so we can control this spread. We've talked about this all year. Oh, sorry, Mr. Butterfield.
Sorry, just because this has come up a couple of times in the Q&A on the daily health screener. So if you're a hybrid learner and you're in cohort A and it's your day to come to school and you don't pass the health screener or you have some symptoms, you will call the attendance office and call your child in, and just like you would in a normal school year, to let us know what's going on. So, approach it like you would as if your student was, scheduled to attend school that day. If there's a symptom, even though you complete that health screener, you still want to call our attendance office to inform us of what's going on.
Yeah, thank you. Very good point. Yeah. We've kind of stressed this before, and this just helps with containing the spread and keeps our students and staff safe, and allows for the return to campus and all these other activities. Our sports are getting going, and music and choir and all these things. So please, the county has guidelines in terms of, gatherings inside people's homes or over certain numbers. Please avoid those gatherings and please follow the health guidance. I mean, we can't stress this enough. Wear your mask when you're outside in public and do all those things. It's good for all of us in the community. So we implore that, please. The students will need to bring, we mentioned this before, but the headphones piece and school materials, students can't share things when they're on campus during this time because of possible, exposure and so on. If there are things that students may need, we can help provide them if there's a need for those items. But we have some backup headphones and some other things we can provide to students. But if there's something they would need for that day, they would need to bring it with them because we can't have the sharing in classrooms. One thing that goes along with that as well is a mask. We mentioned this before. Students would have to wear a mask every day. So if they don't have a mask, we will we have some that we can provide them as a backup, but we want them to bring it. They have to have a mask every day. And if they refuse to wear a mask, then they won't be able to come on campus. That's the health guidelines. We cannot allow anybody on campus who will not wear a mask. There are some exceptions for students who have specific needs, but we work through those with the families to support that. And then the last thing just to touch upon is if there is any close contact that you may have in your family or student with a positive COVID-19 case or a student test positive, please let our COVID liaisons know, let our school, pretty much the school admin know, because then we can follow up that. We have to report that information to the Alameda County Health Department. It helps us then with our communication to other possible affected or impacted peers in the classroom or staff. And then we have to follow our protocols for communications from there. So that's a very important piece. I know it's scary to share that information, but we're here to support. We'll provide all the support we can. There's no judgment, just trying to help support everybody so we help control the spread. So Mr. Butterfield, anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just, I've had a number of phone conversations with families trying to figure out how to navigate this decision. I'll share that, me and Mr. Bull are both parents in Pleasanton, and we've had to have those conversations at home as well. So I kind of want to just share some of the things that I've shared with parents in the conversation. So this is an incredibly individualized decision, whether you choose hybrid or remote. And we understand and appreciate that. We ask for that commitment again, so we can plan and prepare, and because students need to plan and prepare as well and have that consistency. One of the things that I find myself saying a lot is that as you reflect on these conversations at home, if your student's struggling academically, social, emotionally, they're having trouble maintaining a schedule at home, then hybrid's probably an appropriate choice. If you're in a position where your health circumstances at home allow that, then that's a good indicator that hybrid's a good choice for you. We're here to support our students, and if students need a little bit more external motivation to be successful, then that's what hybrid is made for. If your student is doing well academically, doing well, has some social outlets that are facilitated at home or outside the school day, if they're well, if they are safe and navigating this environment, have good internal motivation, they're going to be okay in the remote setting as well. That doesn't mean you should have to choose remote in that case. Obviously, if they want to be back on campus, then choose hybrid. But that's a good indicator that they're going to be successful continuing in the remote. So, don't feel like you're setting them up for failure. If they have good internal motivation, they're navigating this well, social, emotionally, and academically. Indicators are that they'll continue to be successful in that. So that's what I've been sharing with families in conversations. And please know that we are here to support our families, that we want to support whatever choice that you're able to make through this process, and make the choice that's right for you and for your family and for your child. I know, high schoolers especially want to try to follow path of what their friends choose. I would just encourage you to have this conversation and choose what's right for your child and your family, regardless of any conversations that are happening outside of your household. So please know that we're here to support you through that, and try to block out that external noise if you can, and really focus on what's best for your own child in this environment. None of us know what happens and what the home environment truly looks and feels like for every student, and we're trusting that that best as a parent, and you'll make the decision that's right for your family.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Butterfield. It's a difficult one. Obviously, we extended the confirmation window until tomorrow, Wednesday, at 5 p.m. because there was a lot of questions. That's why we thought we would hold this webinar and push out more information to help families make those decisions. It did come up in the Q&A. Will there be another confirmation going out of what you chose? We won't be doing that. I mean, because we can maybe do it. We'll have to look and see what the numbers look like. But the 5 p.m. tomorrow, the confirmation changes or closes, and then we can finish our planning for if we have to move students based on numbers between the group A or group B coming to campus. And as Mr. Butterfield said, you have to do what's right for you and your family and your student. It's a difficult decision, and a lot of questions come up. Well, if you choose one, can you change later on? I mean, for now, we're asking you to choose the one that is best for you and your family. We don't know. Obviously, we're trying to get ready for March 11th when our students return in the smaller groups, and then March 16th, and we grow from there. We don't know what April may bring. We have spring break, and then we have all the testing. We don't know. So for now, you're committing to hybrid or remote, and it's your decision as a family. And like we've said, throughout this presentation, we're excited to have our hybrid in-person learners back on campus, and excited to keep supporting our remote learners as well. That's what we are here for, to help support our students. So if you can go to the next slide, please, that would be awesome. Our last conclusion slide. So Mr. Butterfield referenced this before, but we truly appreciate your support. I know there's a lot of questions, anxiety, fear, frustration. I mean, from everybody. And this has been a long 12 months that we've been in this situation with school, being in a remote setting, and we're excited for the transition back. But there's a lot of unknowns and fear about that. So I will admit that, like, I have it as myself as a principal, as a parent, as all these things that we're dealing with. But we truly appreciate your patience as we're learning. It's going to be a little bumpy and messy, and we're going to try and communicate as much as we can, and we may have to adjust things as we go. And as we are learning as school admin, and the teachers are learning in the classroom, and our support staff are learning, and students are learning, and parents are learning. So just please understand, it's going to take some time. Please be kind. I mean, we're all in this together. We're trying to learn how to do this. We're trying our best and we are here to support the students, and truly appreciate the support. I know that you as parents and guardians are doing a ton to support your students at home. The students are working hard, and they're doing what they can to stay engaged, and our staff has worked extremely hard. So it's been a group effort to get us to this point where we can return students to campus. If you came on late, people are asking about, is this going to be into the next fall? This is only, we're talking about for the remainder of the spring semester. We will, look and see what happens in the next month with cases, and we'll have to plan for the fall in a separate kind of conversation. But for now, just focus on the here and now and help support each other, and be patient and kind, and we appreciate your support. And as we mentioned, we'll push out this video when we're concluded, and we will also capture some of the questions that were in the Q&A and try and document that to push out as well, because there's some really good questions and very detailed, specific, needs for everybody in different cases. So anything else to say, Mr. Butterfield?
No, just thank you everybody for joining us today. Hopefully we gave you some information to help you make the best decision, the right decision for your family. And, we're always here to try to help answer additional questions. You can always reach out to your counselor, your vice principal, either of us, and we'll do our best to help get you this maybe more specific answers. Please take the time to read through the information that we pushed out yesterday. We'll be pushing this video out as soon as we can get it kind of clipped up and ready to roll. And thank you very much, everybody, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of your day, and appreciate you being here. Thank you.